Hi there, in this video I'm going to show you how to make pulled pork from pig's butt. Now my name's Ben, this is Smoking Hot Confessions and we love barbecue. So if you love barbecue too, consider liking this video, sharing it with some friends and subscribing to the channel. Alright, now we're not actually using the pig's butt, we're using what's called a Boston butt. Now this is rectangular, quite an angular piece of pork, but like I said, it's not actually the pig's butt. It's from high up on the pig's shoulder, and you can use a couple of different cuts for making pulled pork. You can use a Boston butt, you can use a collar butt. I've even done it using a whole shoulder with just the hop cut off. There's heaps of variations of this, so don't worry too much about it. Now the great thing about doing pulled pork is that you don't need a whole lot of tools. I'm just using this wireless thermometer from Fireboard, a nice sharp flexible boning knife, and some meat claws. Now later on in the day we're also going to need a dry esky, but we'll get back to that later. To kick things off, the first thing we need to do of course is remove it from the cryo vacuum. Now sometimes when you're cryo vacuuming those juices in there, they can get a little bit of a funny smell, but don't panic, that's just part of the cryovac process. Take it out, pat it down, give it a couple of minutes, that smell will go away. Now what you'll notice about the Boston butt is that there's quite a really thick layer of fat running all the way across the top. We're going to lop off most of that. I'm going to trim it down so we can get that seasoning right on the meat. We're going to be cooking this low and slow for a really long period of time, so a lot of this fat is going to melt away, but the more of this sort of hard fat on top that we can get rid of, the better we're going to be. Now this softer fat that's underneath the hard fat, that stuff will melt away nice and easy. And you can also see there's different layers here inside the muscle itself, and there's little bits of soft fat in between there as well. This actually looks pretty good under here. We'll just tidy up some of these little bits and pieces. There's a bone in there, bone in Boston butt. I think we might leave that bit alone, that's pretty soft. Now for a simple backyard pulled pork, I'm going to call that done. Now seasoning pork is really simple. Remember how your mother always used to serve you roast pork with applesauce? That's because pork loves sweet. So today we're going with an Aussie rub from Smoky Pastures in South Australia. It's called Sweet Dreams. It is fantastic for making pulled pork. Now seasoning pork is real simple. I like to just have a glove on one hand and the bottle of rub in the other. Sprinkle it from as high as you can and then pat it onto the meat. I don't use a binder, a lot of people do. I find it just adds some unnecessary cost and mess to the whole experience. Not only do you need to cover both sides of the pork, you also need to make sure that you get all the edges so you've got a nice even coverage all around every surface of the pork. Now don't be shy with it either. The natural moisture of the meat is going to bind this rub to it, so don't be shy, put a ton of it on there, it's all good. So now that our Boston butt is seasoned, it's off to the smoke. So we're going to be smoking up this Boston butt today on the Stretch from Jagged Wood Fired, and we're going to be using some beautiful ironbark splits from Ministry of Smoke. When it comes to wood on the east coast of Australia here, this is your go-to, ironbark. But just make sure you go to a quality supplier like Ministry of Smoke so it's all properly seasoned and properly dried. It's going to give you a much cleaner taste on your final product. You'll also remember at the top of the video I said we were going to be putting the Fireboard wireless thermometer to use. Now is the time. There's two temperatures that are really important that we monitor in this process. The ambient temperature inside the smoker and the internal temperature of the Boston butt itself. Now this particular Fireboard can have up to 6 probes in it. The first one's always the ambient probe. You can have up to 5 other probes for different proteins that you're cooking. Very handy. Now you may have spotted that the Stretch does have a thermometer up the top here. Whilst it is very good and it is very accurate, we want to know what's happening on grill level. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to take a clip, we're going to stick it in the back, we're going to slide the ambient probe into that clip like that, and then the end of that goes into slot number 1 on the Fireboard. The beauty of the Fireboard is that that talks to my Wi-Fi, which talks to my phone, so I can set this up. Pulled pork takes a long time to do, be able to run around and do a bunch of other chores as well. Super helpful. So now we're just going to take our piece of pork, plonk it on the grill in front of that ambient probe, make sure it's not touching. I've got plenty of space here in the Jagged, so I don't really need to worry too much about that. And now we're going to take our internal temperature probe, and I'm going to put that nice and deeply into this piece of pork. Not so deep that it goes out the other side, but we were aiming for the middle. Now in terms of temperatures, what we're looking for is the ambient probe. We want that at about 275 degrees Fahrenheit, and I'm going to close this and we're going to leave it alone until the pork has an internal temperature of 165, and then we're going to move on to phase 2. Right now our pork has well and truly hit the stall. We're just a shade under 165, but every piece of meat reacts differently, so I'm not that surprised. There's a point where the meat will stop increasing in temperature and it'll plateau. A lot of people panic, and that's when they start to pull the meat out and decide they're just going to have it at that roast temperature of 165. That's not going to be pulled pork, and a shoulder is not going to be good eating at 165. It's got to go to 203. So I'm going to show you a trick to push it through that stall fast. Now this trick I want to show you is called the crutch. And what it is, it just involves basically wrapping the meat with some other ingredients in aluminium foil, and it's going to insulate the meat and it's going to force it to rise faster through the stall to hit that magic 203. Now we've got a couple of ingredients that we're going to use here on this aluminium foil. Now you see I've actually got two pieces here, and I've laid them in opposite directions. That's going to make sense in a minute. Now the three ingredients that we've got, about a half a cup of loose brown sugar, 4 good slices of unsalted butter, and of course some maple syrup. Because as I said at the top of the video, pork loves sweet. Start with the brown sugar. Dump that in the middle, spread it out a little bit, about the same length as your piece of pork. Grab your slices of butter, put them on top, and drizzle it with the maple syrup. If you've been cooking for a while, you know that brown sugar and butter are the core elements of a caramel sauce. So yes, we're basically going to bake the rest of the pork in a caramel sauce. So good. Let's get that pork in here. Alright, I'm super stoked. I've just pulled this Boston butt out of the smoker, and look at that. The deep mahogany colour. You can see that where the bones are coming out, it's sort of shrunk in a little bit off the bones. We do have some juices pooling on the top a little bit, but I'm not too worried about that because we are about to upend it into this caramel sauce mixture here. This next bit is super simple. Okay, so all we do is grab our piece of pork, upend it over on top of that. Oh man, even the bottom side of that looks good. We're going to fold it up very carefully in the first piece of foil there. One quick tip is the heavier the foil, the better the end result, because it won't tear and you're going to keep all that caramel sauce and the beautiful pork juices. Now that I've got it in one layer, I'm going to turn it over and wrap it in the second layer. Alright, so now a piece of pork is double insulated in this thick aluminium foil, and right now the butter's melting on top. It's going down through that brown sugar with the maple syrup and the natural juices of the pork. So it's over to you, Stretch. Okay, it's time to put the pork back in the smoker. Now of course it's wrapped in foil, it's not going to take on any more smoke, so we're basically using this like an oven now. There's our probe still there ready to go, so that's going back in. Just going to plonk that back on the shelf, put the probe straight through the foil. Now all we've got to do is monitor the fire, keep the temperature where we want it, and wait until that internal probe hits that magic 203. Alright, so we've pushed this pork through the stall, and I've got to tell you, it is looking good. I've opened this up, and the smell, we can smell that caramel and that pork in there. It is divine. Now the internal temperature has gone a little bit over 203, because I did test it with my probe before, and it wasn't quite at the tenderness that I wanted to. Now you will see that I do have a instant read thermometer here. You don't have to have it, because what we're looking for is the feel of resistance against the probe, and that's more important than the actual temperature itself. So what I'm going to do to give you an idea is I'm going to extend this instant read all the way. So we've got that probe on the end there, and you could do this with a toothpick or a kebab stick, something like that. I'm going to drop it into the pork. Step of this is the rest. The rest is going to let whatever tension is holding in this muscles to relax. All we're going to do is fold this back up, wrap it in a towel, and drop it in an empty, dry esky for 1 hour. And as I said, the heat's going to dissipate, the muscles are going to relax, and we're going to have some juicy, sweet, soft pulled pork. Now our pork's done resting, and because of my super cool, super ingenious plan of doing that slow-mo drop of the instant read thermometer, it actually pierced the bottom of the foil and all the liquids went down into the bottom of the pan already. So I'm not going to get to give you that gratuitous sort of shot over the top of the liquids heading back down over the meat, but that's okay. Now it's time to pull this pork. This is where the claws come in, the actual pulling of the pork. Makes it a lot easier. I'm just trying to make sure that I turn all this pork over inside those joists in the bottom of the tray too. That's where all that caramel sauce is that we talked about before, the brown sugar, the honey, the maple syrup, and of course, the natural pork juice. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, my pork has been pulled. So there you are, that is my beginner basic backyard pulled pork. So simple, so delicious, sweet, caramel, delicious, smoky, porky goodness, which means there's just one thing left for me to do. Ooh, that's good beer. Oh yeah. Now when it comes to serving up pulled pork, there's so many things you can do other than just the basic pulled pork sliders. Not that there's anything wrong with pulled pork sliders, we all know that. So let me know in the comments below what else would you like to see me do with this delicious pulled pork. I got a few ideas of what I'm going to do, but I want to know what you want to do. So that's it for today. Until next time, take care of each other and keep on killing.